fresh off his 16th NBA draft, covering it for the worldwide leader in sports, ESPN's Jay Bilas, here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Jay?
I'm doing great, Rich. How are you?
What do you think the story last night was?
Well, I mean, the story going in were the big guys and how many of them there were at the top of the draft. But I think, after watching it last night, there were a bunch of good players in it. I wish I could say who I think were going to be the best. I mean, you have beliefs, but I thought at the end of the night, I was really interested in the guards, and this is a 3-point shooting spread floor game, and the longer I the draft board, the more I was thinking, Luka Doncic made a pretty good case to go number one overall in today's game, and same thing with I don't say number one, but like Trae Young and Colin Sexton and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, some of those guys that are guards may have bigger impacts than the big guys, even though the big guys can all run, they're all mobile, they can all step away. They're not the old school sort of back to the basket anchor low post guys, but I still think the guards are going to wind up having pretty big impacts in this thing.
Yeah, no, it's so difficult, obviously, to say. For instance, 2 years ago, if walking off the NFL draft set, hey, who's going to start week one? Nobody would have said Carson Wentz. Nobody. In the same way, last year, who's going to be the best? Oh yeah, Donovan Mitchell's going to be the best. What do you think about Fitz, though? Who do you think was drafted and like, you know what, the system they run and the players that they have around him, this kid has a chance to really have a great rookie campaign? Jay?
I didn't see anybody that stood out that way, Rich, as far as – because I think you're right. Like, I wouldn't have said last year when Donovan Mitchell was taken 13th, well, there's a guy who's going to start and he'll be a Rookie of the Year candidate. I just didn't view him that way. I didn't think he'd be able to shoot it that well all year long and take over. But I will tell you this. I mean, I went to college with Quinn Snyder. We were teammates in college. We've been friends for 30 years. And after the draft last year, I got a text from him saying, what do you think of Mitchell? And I texted back and said, I think he's really good. I think you guys got a good player. And if I remember right, he texted back something to the effect of, we think he can be like Russell Westbrook. And I was like, what? Really? Like, why didn't you tell me that? That would have been nice to know before the draft. But I know why they didn't, because they didn't want to let out how much they liked him. But, they were right. And there may be gems in this draft that their college performances didn't show, because no way did Donovan Mitchell's college performance show he was going to make that kind of jump. And then other guys, like, that's one of the things that it kind of makes me laugh. Like, you and I are both a lot older than when we first met, but when you mentioned I've been doing this 16 years, the draft for 16 years, and when I first started doing this, man, I was so secure in my convictions about a player. I may have been wrong, but I was I believed it down to my socks. Now I'm looking at it going, well, maybe, here's what I think, but I don't know. I wind up like hedging on everything because I know, we just don't know, and I don't think they know in football either. I don't believe they do. I think you have belief sets. But, a lot of really smart basketball people looked at Steph Curry when he came out and said, he's going to struggle. I don't see him translating as well. And now that Curry did so well, now we're looking at Trae Young going, yep, he's Steph Curry. And I'm not sure it's that simple.
Well, I'm imagining, Jay, that you don't have to text Quinn Snyder about what he thinks about Grayson Allen. And I'm wondering what that pre-draft conversation between Snyder and Coach K, if there even was one, or if it was even necessary. When you think about it.
Yeah, I don't think it was all that necessary. Grayson Allen has put together a body of work, and he's a really good player. And nobody sits on the fence with regard to him. They either like him or they don't. And it has nothing to do with how he plays. It has to do with whether they like him or not. So there's a lot of baggage that gets carried into this by fans. But what is undeniable is that kid can really shoot it. He came out of an NBA workout recently for a bunch of different NBA teams, and that was all NBA personnel were talking about. They said it's one of the best shooting workouts they've seen. And so he's a good athlete. He tested really well at the combine. He's mature. He he's been knocked around a little bit, so he's not, it's not like it's going to be, horrible adversity for him to go in the NBA. He's going in as a grown man, kind of old school in that way. Like, when everybody used to go in when they were 22 and nobody said they'd hit their ceiling yet.
Right.
But he'll do fine there. That's a good fit for him, and he can space the floor for them and make shots, and he doesn't have to carry a big load. He can just blend in. Well,
speaking of grown men or guys who had grown men performances at the collegiate level in the last year or two, the big ragu Dante DiVincenzo going to the Bucks. How do you like that fit, Jay Bilas?
I think Dante's going to do well. He's 21 years old. He was a redshirt because he was injured his freshman year after he came out of Delaware, and he's exceeded my expectations of him as a player, and I think he's going to continue to get better. Do I think he's better than some of these other guys in the draft? Some of the other guards. I don't. I think he was drafted about where he should have been. But 2-3 months ago, I wouldn't have said he was a first-round draft pick. I didn't see him that way. But the way he ended the season, it's very rare you see a rise like that just off of not only a championship, but a guy who performs really well in the NCAA tournament. And look, he's legit. He played really well at the Combine and showed what he's capable of. But I don't think he was a first-round pick before that Combine. And when he got out of there, he was. And I think he'll do well, but I do think it's going to take him a little bit of time to figure it out.
Jay Bilas here on the Rich Eisen Show. Ask him the poll question, Chris. Best we can.
Yeah, Jay, looking at the top five, which of these rookies makes an all-star game first? DeAndre Ayton, Marvin Bagley, Luka, Jaren Jackson, or Trae Young?
I think it's going to be Luka Doncic because he's played more high-level basketball than anybody else in this draft. And played in the second-best league in the world, really, in the ACB league. And I think he's legit, and I think he's going to do really well. It's just a question of how well. Well is a given. Like, he's not going to be one of these. Like, I think a lot of people, and then myself included, the first thing you think of when you think of a European player is, well, look what happened with Darko, and remember Nicholas Skidishvili. Well, there was no data on these guys. You just saw them in workouts, maybe a little bit of 5-on-5. You got years of tape on Luka Doncic and seeing him in person. They've scouted him more than any college player in this draft. And the only thing he doesn't have is like crazy world-class athleticism. He's a really good athlete, but he's not a world-class athlete like some of these other guys in the draft. And but he knows how to play, man. That dude can pass it. He can make shots. He's unafraid, and like I always write down in scouting reports. It makes it really easy for me when I see a guy that just, man, that guy knows how to play. He's got a feel. He's instinctive. All this stuff. I just write down 4 letters, KHTP. And that's what I wrote down when I was watching tape of this guy. He just knows how to play, and he's going to be fine. And playing in Dallas will really help because it's a little more high profile. If he was in Sacramento or something like that, I might not have answered that he'd be the first to play in the All-Star game.
Well, and then that said, Jay, a lot of folks thought the guy with the most talent, the highest ceiling, to use the talent evaluation phrase, was Michael Porter Jr. if it wasn't for his medical. Now that we know where he wound up right in the middle of the first round for the Nuggets, do you think it was proper that he fell as far as he did? Would you have been on that board if you were an evaluator last night, Jay?
It depends, Rich. Like, I haven't seen the medical, and there are 2 things on this. One, at some point the risk becomes worth it, but if the medical's bad enough that you don't think the guy's going to be productive, then he's not even worth the 14th pick. But to be able to get a guy of that talent, if you think that he's going to be healthy, to get that kind of talent at 14 is a steal, if healthy in the long run. Now, if he's just going to miss a year like Joel Embiid when he came out, I would look at it kind of like with Embiid. If you could draft Embiid now and after his freshman year, but you couldn't get him till after he was a junior, I'd draft him in a heartbeat, and I'd wait that time out. But if you're talking about long-term injury, that's a different deal. But I'll tell you what I can't believe happens in the NBA is that players will give their medical to some teams and not to others. And I find that like almost unconscionable that the NBA would allow that. And, you know, look, I understand that the players, the college players and all that, they are not members of the union until they're drafted, until they sign contracts. So, you know, you can't make them do it under a collective bargaining agreement. But the league can tell every team, once you get a medical, you got to share it with the rest of the league. Like, I don't think the league's teams should be competing on medical information. That shouldn't be some sort of competitive advantage. The decision should be, all right, we've all seen the medical. You know, Rich, your team has more of a risk tolerance, so you're going to take Porter at 7. We don't have that. That's what you should be making your decision on, not you know, you haven't seen the medical, and I've seen all his X-rays, and I've had all my doctors check it out. So I know something you don't on a fundamental matter in a multi-million-dollar decision. I can't believe the league allows that.
I think the NFL does have what you're talking about, Jay, at the NFL scouting combine. That's everybody knows whether a kid has a heart murmur. Everybody knows about everything about a kid's medical going into a draft. I'm almost 100% certain on that, Jay. Yeah,
that just seems like, you know, if the NBA were buying cars, you know, they wouldn't just let one team look under the hood. You know, if the owner let one team look under the hood and everybody else has to look at it from the outside, you know, that wouldn't be right. And same kind of thing. I don't want to make these guys seem like they're machines or anything, but they are assets, and they're assets these teams are pouring a lot of money in. And I just don't see how some teams didn't know what Jaren Jackson's medical was, or didn't know what Michael Porter's medical was. That doesn't seem right to me.
Last one for you, Jay. Were you and Reese and the rest of the crew aware of Adrian Wojnarowski's thesaurus synonym parade last night on Twitter?
Not until after. I was not aware until after, and I couldn't stop laughing. I mean, I love Woj. I mean, he's not only a great guy, and just a pleasure to be around, but he knows everything. I mean, literally everything that's going on in the NBA. And when I found out about it, when Van Pelt was teasing him about it when he went on SVP after the draft. And then I went and read all of it, and I thought it was brilliant. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I mean, his English teacher, no doubt, was beaming wherever that person was last night.
The double negatives, it was fantastic.
And as best you could tell, ESPN, the NBA didn't say anything about it during the broadcast, I guess.
I don't know. I didn't really know about. I read about it this morning, so I didn't know about the prohibition or all that stuff. I was just worried about how many times I was going to say wingspan, and could I get away? Could I get away with, like, how am I going to talk about this guy being really good on pick and rolls when the next guy's really good on pick and rolls and this guy's really good? How do you avoid saying the same thing over and over again? I had my plate full.
Well, you need to go to Woj and get some synonyms for that next year. Maybe he'll learn his thesaurus.
That's a good idea. I gotta plan better.
Jay, great chat as always. We'll talk down the line. Thanks for the time today, brother. Appreciate it.
Great being with you, bro. See you, man.
Always. That's Jay Bilas.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.